Welcome, councillors, to the February meeting of council. Staff and gallery, I declare the February meeting open. We have leave of absence from Councillor Wee Smith and Councillor Johnston. I'll bring your next item is 1.5, the minutes of the previous meeting for confirmation. That's the council meeting held on the 22nd of January 2021. Moved Councillor Hearn and seconded Councillor Miller. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, I'll bring your attention to 1.6. There's a matter arising from the previous minutes, and I'll hand over to Freehold to explain that matter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Angus contacted me during the week and alerted me that resolution number 2018-22-282, which is in relation to the near of the pool. Thanks. Reflected that Councillor Johnson actually moved the motion, but it was actually Councillor Angus that moved the motion. So to correct that motion, and we've checked the video and double checked the notes, we just need to move a motion. So can we chuck that on the screen to amend those minutes to reflect Councillor Angus and not Councillor Johnson?
Moved Councillor Hearn. Seconded Councillor Boothby. Everyone clear? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried.
It's a curious anomaly, isn't it, that we confirm minutes we know are wrong?
It's a tiny bit in 20 pages.
Yeah, but it's the system.
Next item is the Mayor's report, item 2.1. Any questions?
Move the report be received.
Moved Councillor De Vries, seconded Councillor Haybeck. All those in favour? Move on to the consensus agenda. Any items that members wish to have excluded from the consensus agenda? No? Someone like to move the consensus agenda? Move Councillor Angus, sorry. I've got new notes I've got up here. Very well. Support. Seconder, Councillor Barrett. All those in favour? Carried. All those in favour, sorry. Carried. We now move to 7.2, which is the Chief Executive Officer's report. And is a request for the nomination and appointment of the Muriel High School Governing Council.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Deputy Mayor Johnston. He has expressed through email to everybody that he is willing to stand. I'll put him forward accordingly.
Second.
Seconded Councillor De Vries.
You don't need a seconder.
Oh, I don't need a seconder, sorry.
I thought he was moving the motion with Councillor Johnson's name in it.
Well, we don't have to vote on the nomination.
We're voting on it.
Look, you jumped in a little bit early on me. That's all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
I've also had an indication from Councillor Troop that she was wishing to put forward.
Wasn't it Dave?
Yeah.
No, I will withdraw my nomination.
Yep, and Councillor Haybeck showed an interest at one as well. So I have a nomination from Councillor Johnston. Is there a nomination for you're withdrawing?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, Michelle, I'm second, but I thought he was moving the motion. So
All right.
big part.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Now that we haven't got a a situation where there was more than one person vying for the position, we can then, I can formally, we can formally look at it, and I think we have to have oh, no, he's not here. We don't have to declare an interest because he's not here. Okay. Would like, you're moved, Councillor Johnston and Councillor De Vries the second. All those in favour? Carried. Page 9 is the electronic attendance at meetings. It's a submission to the LGA.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved Councillor De Vries. And seconded Councillor Angus.
I assume Martin wrote this? No? Well, whoever did a great job. So,
Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
no, I think it's very
Regeer behind you, Ray.
You did right?
No, Regeer.
Again.
Oh, well done. Yeah, no, it was, I think it was encapsulated what we've been discussing on numerous occasions extremely well. So, yes.
Councillor Angus, you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, maybe for context for anyone listening in from outside, basically, we'd rather do meetings in the room than online because it's human.
Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Next item is 7.2.1.3 on page 16, which is to do with the request for training and development for Councillor True. Councillor True?
Conflict of interest.
Thank you.
I forgot that.
So this is in accordance to section 80A of the Local Government Act, Council to establish elected members' training and development policy. And this report seeks for the attendance of elected members' full program to be held over 3 days. Councillor Troop has put a request to attend.
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Boothby
Second that, Mayor.
and seconded Councillor Barrett, and Hayward, sorry, Hayward. All those in favour? Carried.
Kathy? Well done for having a crack too.
That's been carried and endorsed by council for you to attend. Thank you. On page 20 is the monthly finance report as of the 31st of January 2021, 7.2.2.1. Any questions you have for Delay?
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Boothby,
Seconded.
seconded Councillor De Vries. All those in favour? Carried. Now, there was an additional report which was sent out, 7.2.2.2, which is the mid-year budget review. Which is an addendum report. Any questions that anyone may have? Councillor Schilling?
Just that there was an error in the autonomous vehicle consultation. Thank you.
I was just trying to catch the mayor before you did.
Oh, okay.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Schilling found an error where I had anticipated the report from Councillor Wren, the autonomous vehicle, would put the adjustment in prior to the resolution. So that resolution needs to, variation needs to be adjusted back to 15,000. I've adjusted the recommendation to include that fact. It's not overly material. I know it'll have a slight tiny rounding error on our operating statement, but not overly significant.
I'm happy to move that.
Moved Councillor Schilling, seconded Councillor Miller. You wish to speak to it? It's all been explained.
Yes.
All those in favour? Carried.
Well done, Mayor.
Any other questions that members may have on the mid-year budget review? Mr. Lay?
Thank you, Mayor. If I may just bring to council's attention a couple of items in there.
Yep.
So in relation to the executive summary on page 7 of the council agenda, the addendum, the long-term plan review area, there's a few items as we go through the year that do have a long-term plan effect as council adopts budget reviews that go through. Just wanted to bring those to council's attention. The first dot point there is referring to the assets that council has on its books. We are currently going through the revaluation for buildings and recreation assets throughout the council area and also condition assessment. And with that comes the review of useful lives of those assets, as well as the current build costs if we were to build them this year. So within this particular budget that we've just reviewed, that we've just had a look at, there was an increase to depreciation within those two asset classes. That will have a long-term effect in the long-term plan because the long-term plan was based on previous information. We did allow for a increase in the valuations, but when we do the long-term plan review during these next few months as part of the budget process, we will incorporate those depreciation amounts into the long-term plan and see what effect that does to the operating result. Third dot point on there is talking about the big projects. And as council receives grant monies for different projects, I noticed the one recently for was the soccer club, which was a 25% grant funded project. The long-term plan 40% grant funded. And the amounts may not necessarily be the same as what's in the long-term plan for the build costs. So as part of this review that we do for the long-term plan, we'll need to incorporate those revised monies that have been received for those projects. And then council then can decide whether or not it's supporting the difference with loan funding and then also a mix of other projects that could have been the long-term plan for the 2021 year that aren't happening. So moving things around, and council then will set the priorities for those. So just as you're aware that as things are moving within that grant sphere and what's available, it also changes what's in the long-term plan, right? And the effect of the repayments of those. The other item on that particular page is relation to COVID-19. As you're aware, the council had within the actual budget for the 2021 year a rates remission facility there for throughout the council area, and we've had one application so far. The application is closed by the end of March to enable businesses and people to have their tax information up to date to be able to make a claim. But so within this particular adjustment, you will notice there's a 40,000 reduction to the 150,000, which has been offset by the reduction in fines and charges that we've been applying. So they balance each other, offset each other up there. The other thing is on the next page, uniform presentation of finances. The actual amount that was needed for this year for borrowing was 9 million in that particular page. That extended to 14 million with this particular review and the last review as well. And the reason for the extra $5 million was because council actually carried forward $5 million from last year, projects that weren't completed or started last year. Along with that, there was actually $9 million more in the actual cash starting account. How they all come together. $4.5 million for the carried forward projects. There was $1.5 million from grants received in advance last year that we were supposed to be for this year. There was $0.7 million for FAGs, which was paid in advance, which we weren't expecting. There's also, along with that, there's the debtors rates, accounts payable movements for cash at year end. So within this particular plan, there is still a $9.7 million loan funding application in here if council builds all the capital requirements that are in this particular budget during this year. Just be aware of that. So if council continues to build projects that are in this adopted budget as is today, we're needing to borrow $9.7 million during this year at some stage. The KPIs, indicators, they're all within the council's target ranges. So that's travelling okay for this current year. notwithstanding the previous comments about the long-term plan, which will be revising over the next couple of months. All right. Just wanted to give council that briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? No, someone put the, recommendation. Okay, thank you. Speak to it.
There's nothing to say really, is
Okay,
it?
all right.
It's always interesting though.
All those in favour?
We've already done it.
We've moved second and voted.
Have we?
Yeah.
Right.
And we did that without the
Yeah.
officer's explanation.
It's only Councillor Milne that used to sort of upset the apple cart.
Oh, okay, all right.
The feds always give us the money early if they think that they can get
I didn't tick
a
me
budget
box
balance
for
next
those,
year
so
and they
there
don't
we
want to
go.
bury the dirt in this year's one.
Okay,
Every year they do that.
thank you, Mr. Light, for your explanation. Page 23. Library services change of service levels to facilitate staff training and development and team meetings on page 23.
Yeah, move the recommendation, your worship.
Moved councillor De Vries, seconded councillor Troop. Wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, just putting it in context, the benefit of councillor Angus, who likes us to speak to the motions. Yeah, basically we're allowing for the staff to have time off during certain times of the year in order to do additional training. But we're also suggesting that they try to avoid doing that during holidays and busy period. That's the gist of it. Very straightforward.
Mr. Thomas.
Just slightly to respond to that, is it's not actually time off, it's actually an important part of their.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
And also that we haven't been able to achieve that with them doing that outside of office hours, and I feel it's unreasonable to continue to expect them to do that. So whilst I know that's what you understood, I just wanted to clarify for the benefit of the anybody listening.
Time off their usual duties, I should have.
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Page 25, which is the fees and charges, and it's the report 7.3.2.1, fees and charges 2020 and 2021, Queenstown Senior Cits and RSL Hall.
Move the recommendation.
Moved councillor Boothby, seconded councillor Hearn. Wish to speak to it? Any questions? If not, all those in favour? Carried. Page 27, 7.3.2.2. This is the Uriopta War Memorial Swimming Pool plant review update on page 27.
I'll move that now. And I'll second it.
Moved councillor Haybick and seconded councillor Angus. Who wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Mayor.
Councillor?
Page 29 of the report. I was a little bit taken back by that when I first read it, as to the quotes replacing the 6 filters there, replacing them with 3 new ones for the costings. $48,000 and so forth. And there was no indication where those amounts came from, no company name. So I've asked Ms. Thomas a few questions in relation to those points. I've got the reply here, which is good, and thanks, Ms. Thomas, for that. So the answer to that was the South Pacific Pools contractor, which is the same contractor that put the filtration in the regs. That's not talking about. The next question was valves, $10,000. Is that for 3, assuming that each filter has a valve? For valve 1, if so, we need 2 or 3. We understand this might increase by 10 or 20,000. So I think on that 108,000, we need to put another $20,000 onto that. So that needs to be sorted. And Thirdly, dot point 5, potential pump changes. Does this mean utilising the current pumps or maybe purchasing new? This may be additional cost. Not known, but Ms Thomas assumes that we'll have to buy new pumps. That's another. The main thing was that the quote came out and then it states that it doesn't meet any standards. And talk about the water flow. So one thing we need to make sure is that whatever we do, or the quotes we get, the pumps or the new system will meet current filtration standards in relation to the water flow. So Ms Thomas has answered that one by saying, yes, the current system goes through the toddler's pool, then back into the main pool. So that's understandable, but it's no good saying we want to replace the 6 that are there now with 3 new ones that don't meet the standard. And we know that the full report is not in yet, which it will be coming. So we want to make sure that it is time we really make sure that the new system, whatever we do, we talk about, has to meet the standards of the current government as far as So I'll leave it at that, but I think it's a long way to go, and we'll know within the next number of weeks when the full reports come in as to where we go from here. There's also some evidence that the amount of water that the pool holds is not correct. And so it's been measured up, and I agree with what I've been told, that the 1,450,000 litres, which it's supposed to hold because of its measurement, is about 1.2 million, which comes back to the state that the water flow there at the moment is probably correct. And FMG, the company that did the report, is saying they're using the old figures back from 2015 report, which means that we're looking at a report with the water flows that are correct, and everyone's saying they're not correct. So it's a long way to go.
Yeah, and I guess in the context of the recommendation that you move, that's the next step in all the detail that we need to have before us. Ms Thomas, did you wish to speak? Or?
A couple of points. I wasn't aware of that last one at all, but I would have thought that's been fixed before we actually get the final report to double check that. And since that time, obviously, we fixed those major leaks, which is, I think, what you're alluding to. The other comment I would have made just in relation to the flow rate is more that it's the chicken and egg situation that we find ourselves in that we've been able to maintain that water level quality when the filters were doing a better job. Now that they're not doing that job, the capacity to actually make the water quality as good as it has been, because we've actually, the water flow rate's been an issue forever and a day anyway, but we've managed to maintain that water quality. As time has gone past and we haven't, for whatever reason, replaced the medium in those dam filters, the capacity to actually make that water quality as we would like it to be is becoming more and more difficult. So potentially there's, depending on what absolutely council decides to do, by replacing the filters, you actually make it possible to improve that water quality again, but it doesn't get away from the fact that you're filtering the system through the toddler pool into the main pool, which is just non-compliant fundamentally. So we've worked around that up until now. If council decides that it wants to invest the money in reconfiguring that system to make it compliant, then that's that decision. But there, by changing the filters, you will actually enable the medium inside those filters. So there's different stages to all of those processes. Potentially you have the capacity to make that water quality as it has been the last few years, without doing absolutely everything. So yes, there's absolutely more than one way to approach it, and a lot to do in terms of what's the best outcome. So I guess we will come back with as many of those options as we can to present to you when we, and the report came in last night. I haven't looked at it yet.
Councillor Angus, second.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just bearing in mind this is an interim report. It's really only for information and consideration pending more formal reports. But I think it is heartening that the Newry swimming pool group have recalculated the volume of the pool and appears to be well short of what FMG quoted in its 2015 report. And it does in fact make the pool turnover water compliant. Now, I believe, just to start with, the measurements were taken from the bottom of the pool to the top of the coping, and the water level is at least 300 to 400 mils below that. Makes a significant difference. So rather than having a totally non-compliant piece of equipment, we've actually got a piece of equipment that can be remedied without too much drama. I know that the toddler pool plumbing needs to be addressed, but let's make what we can of what we've got, and I urge you to support this motion. It's purely receiving the information pending more information coming to hand, but I think it's a very significant thing that when in fact we thought we were not compliant with flow rates, perhaps we are. Sound filters, another kettle of fish altogether. And again, I think they can be renovated in the short term, depending on, well, that's certainly from discussions that took place last month with Nutrien. We can get a few more years out of it, depending on what we decide to do ultimately. Thank you.
Councillor Bruce.
Thanks, Your Worship. Obviously, I'll be supporting this motion as well. I just wanted to make a couple of comments though. I think Councillor Haybick and Councillor Angus have both identified the issue that, yeah, we can patch this up as we go for in the short term, but at the core, we still have the fundamental design issues of this pool. This pool was created in the 1940s. It simply isn't designed to the current standards, and we are in a situation where at some point we're going to have to either bring it up to code or accept that it simply can't be fixed. It is about cost and return. That's what we've been looking at all this time. And as we saw, we were given the impression through a series of emails that maybe, with a few $1,000s, these filtration systems could be, fixed up, and simply, as the report has indicated, no, we're talking hundreds of thousands or at least $100,000. And the other problem is too that it then achieves the very thing we're trying to avoid, which is it means that we'd have to shut the pool down during that very brief period where it's actually being in operation. And given how little it's being used at the moment, maybe it's because of the cooler summer, I don't know, but I've been rather disappointed to see the numbers of patrons actually at the moment. So I think we are still in this issue of there is a fundamental issue with the design of the pool and with the age of the equipment. And at some point, we are going to have to do one of the two things that we've talked about, which is either close the pool down as we've suggested, or if we want to reverse our position, we have to then commit a significant amount of money towards the upgrade of this pool. There's no middle ground on this. As much as we'd like to think that, yes, we're going to limp along for a little while longer, and I have no problem with that. If the pool can be serviced at minimal cost, there's no point in shutting it while it's in that state. But we are just putting off the inevitable. At some point, the tough decision will have to be made, and at some point, we have to decide, is that the right location for the Newry pool? And this is what hopefully will come out of the public consultation that we're currently under the process of. But of course, I'll be supporting this motion.
Councillor Boothby.
Let's ask a question on the broader consultation and potential timing for that. Obviously, with the CEO being asked to bring a report back to council for potentially a decision on a way forward, you know, with the potential capital works or not. Obviously, trying to coincide that decision with some results of the consultation would be helpful. Otherwise, it is potentially a matter of investing in an asset that may not, have a future life. So it's just trying to work out the timing of that. But also the resolution that council put forward in November to reverse the decision to close the pool at the end of the season, and the wording in that, which is, I think, exceptionally challenging for staff to navigate in terms of trying to decide whether the benefits outweigh the costs. Have you had any discussions on that in terms of ways to actually navigate that? Because my concern is that it's going to be exceptionally challenging for us to make any kind of decision because it is incredibly vague.
Couple of answers. Leo may want to add something. So in terms of consultation, I'm still toing and froing with WAC about that. They sent me through some stuff late last week, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet. I think we're almost 6 grants into the 7 grants that we've been doing since January. So my time is it's just really challenging to get this done. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to turn my attention back to that. The consultants themselves are finding it challenging to actually come up with a mechanism that actually achieves what we're asking them to achieve. It all sounds very simple. We think we know what we're trying to achieve, but actually, and we're so much involved in it that actually trying to make that clear to the community, the broad community, we want to make sure that we're not going out with something that actually ties us in more knots down the path. So yeah, that is still working its way through. And then in terms of the second part of that question, which was in relation to the capital expenditure ongoing, we haven't had further detailed conversations around that, other than that we'll bring that back to you to make that call as to whether or not the cost outweighs the benefit.
Through
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We haven't had any detailed conversation, but the model in my brain is very much the same model we've been doing for the big project. So we can do a cost benefit analysis and see where that actually stacks up against projects that are returning significant funds versus projects that aren't. That's what's in my mind. So once we now understand what the decisions are, we'll do that CBA, come back to council. As we all know, a cost benefit analysis 1-to-1 is you get $1 back for every dollar invested. Anything under that's not worth investing in. Anything above that, then you prioritise it with all the other expenditure and projects that you want to go forward with. So that's what's in my mind. But yeah, we haven't got to that point yet.
Thank you. No other comments? I guess the recommendation is just ignoring the interim reports, and there's further information which you need to consider in the broader picture. Councillor Hay, do you want to close the debate, or you?
No, I think enough's been said.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Page 35 is the consideration and adoption of the Barossa Regional Gallery Committee resolutions on 7.3.3.1.
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Boothby, seconded Councillor Milling. To speak. All those in favour? Carried. 7.4.1.1 on page 39, which is the Table Cemetery funding agreement. There's a report there outlining that the council in previous years has contributed to the maintenance of the Table Cemetery, with an understanding and an agreement that other people who may not be members of the church could be buried there.
No, I'm not buried there. But I'll move the motion.
Moved Councillor Hearn, seconded Councillor De Vries. Wish to speak to the motion?
No, it's all.
Any questions? All those in favour? Carried. On page 41, The Memorial Avenue Mount Pleasant drainage upgrade, 7.4.1.2. Seeking budget adjustment for the additional work to include some drainage. Moved councillor Hearn, seconded councillor Haybick. No questions, you wish to speak? All those in favour? Carried. Page 47 is 7.4.1.3, the proposed road closure for the MSS Safety Rally, Barossa Leg 2021.
Move the recommendation, Mayor.
Moved councillor Miller, seconded councillor Troop. Wish to speak to the motion, councillor?
No, it's very self-explanatory.
Any questions? Put the motion, all those in favour? Carried. Page 50 is the Stockwell Penrose Road intersection upgrade, a request for a budget adjustment, 7.4.1.7.
I'll move that, Mayor.
Moved councillor Hearn,
All funded.
seconded councillor Haybick. Wish to speak?
It's all funded, so.
All funded, yep, good, congratulations, well done.
Yeah.
Going after more money is always a good strategy. All those in favour? Carried. Page 52,
Move the recommendation.
road closure for the Anzac Day in Tanunda. Moved councillor Debris, seconded councillor. You wish to speak?
Through you, Mayor, if I may, very briefly. There may be changes to that event. At this stage, we're still planning on those road closures. There is some recent announcements in how the city event is going to be run, and last night I understand there were some discussions at the Gawler RSL. So at this stage, we'll plan for those road closures, but it may be that the event may be heavily restricted and or may not proceed. We'll wait to receive advice from the President on that matter.
Your Worship.
And it may well mean that things like the street march may not be. Yeah, okay. Yeah, councillor, I haven't got a seconder yet. It's councillor Miller's the seconder. Councillor Debris, you wish to speak?
Yeah, yes, I do, Your Worship. As well as the street march, this also restricts traffic flow during the actual service itself. If you've ever been to the Tanunda service, in previous years, it was often drowned out by heavy vehicles coming through. Admittedly, there are no heavy vehicles in the main street now, certainly not at that hour, but still it was a problem. So I think it was about 5 years ago or something we implemented this, where we'd actually just have the cars not driving through, not for any other reason than just to keep the noise to a minimum. So even if there is a restricted scale to the event, even if there's only a handful of diggers there, I still think that it's worthwhile just to keep the traffic noise down during the dawn service, if for no other reason.
Councillor Miller,
No, that's fine, all covered.
further comment? All those in favour? Carried. Page 56 is the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act, Business Readiness and Service Level Update, 7.5.1.1. Any questions?
54. 54.
Resheeting, Your Worship. Something near and dear to your heart.
What was that?
Resheeting.
Page 54.
7416, it might not be on your agenda.
No, it's not on my agenda.
You've got an old one.
You got an old agenda.
He's looking at January's.
It's very important. Mount Pleasant Way. Okay. The resheeting one.
Yeah.
7.4.1.6.
Made the recommendation to get you out of trouble.
Okay, my apologies.
What's it about?
Okay, this is to do with additional road resheeting. I did read this though, so, yeah. Additional road resheeting. Approves 13 roads segments from the future program for inclusion in the 2020 and 2021 road resheeting budgets.
Move.
Councillor Debris. Councillor Barrett. Thought you might. Any questions you want to speak?
think we'd be hung and pilloried if we didn't.
Absolutely. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now page 56. The Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act. Any questions of Mr. Maverick?
Mayor, I think the typo in the recommendation in part 3,
Reminder should be remainder.
reminder should be remainder, but I'm actually pretty disappointed in the whole report, which I think has come from Plan SA. It's full of typos and horrible wording and fees and charges. But anyway, that's the way of the world.
Yeah.
But I just thought I'd put the one in the recommendation, that's the one that matters. I will stop short of moving the recommendation,
Okay.
Just on the grounds you don't like it.
basically.
I think we have no choice. I'll move the recommendation.
Moved councillor Boothby, seconded councillor De Vries.
What he said.
Okay, thank you.
I'm less worried about the typos and
We
more
have no
about
choice,
fees and
do we?
No, of course we have no choice, but I just thought I think it's
Frustrating.
poorly written. No one reread it. I just think, I really wonder what we're in for.
As do we.
All those in favour? Carried. Page 78.
Count.
Is the Green Industry Funding Regional Transport Subsidy Program.
yeah, okay.
Any questions?
Oh, Kathy.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved, councillor Troop. Seconded, councillor Hayvick. Wish to speak to it, councillor? All those in favour? Carried.
This is the apathy meeting.
Members, that's where we get to our next item, which is a confidential item to do with a tender for the reconstruction of the Bassavo Road to Nunda. Someone move, we go into confidence, moved councillor Hayvick, seconded councillor Barrett. All those in favour? Carried. We're back out of confidence. Members, that's our agenda for the February meeting. Next meeting is scheduled for the 16th of March 2020 at 9 a.m. So with that in mind, I'll close the February meeting. And if you want a short stretch before the workshop,